Hi, I'm Petra Carroll. Welcome to the first Healing Ways Events Micro Summit, Take a Leap, Manifest Your Destiny and Soul Path. I really noticed that during the COVID crisis, a lot of people have been really stressed and are getting burned out with all the changes that are happening with their work, or they're losing their job. They don't know if they want to go back to it. So people are also massively quitting their job at this point because they don't want to go back to the life they had before. So there's a lot of changes happening, and yeah, and change is like stressing, and it also is tough to have a positive outlook on your options and what you can offer the world. So they're really blocking their own path to success. And so we're going to look to see how to overcome those fears of safety and security, to change your current situation, and finally follow your passion and step into your destiny. I've invited Carla Sridevi Cohen because she is a body and emotional intelligence master healer, and she helps women who are stuck, stagnant, and anxious to become fully self-expressed, connected to their heart experience and experiencing healing, joy, freedom, and financial independence. So that's like the perfect match, I think, for our event. And Carl is especially stunning because she is the recipient of the Exceptional Global Women Award and a two-time best-selling author. I mean, I got a lot of authors in this group, actually. And I don't know how that happened. And after successful careers in both film and public relations, she encountered a health crisis that really turned her life upside down and in bed for like 2 years. And so frustrating that the doctors couldn't really help out in healing. She went on her own journey. And in that journey, she accumulated like 20 plus certifications of varying healing modalities. So I'm not going through the whole list. It's too long, being through a whole half an hour. But she combines her shamanic studies with her business background to help clients move through mental and physical blocks. And she's so passionate and skilled of alleviating both the physical and emotional pain and helping her clients experience deep peace. So that's just amazing. So I really look forward to talking to you. And I believe you're going to talk to us about living your purpose by shifting your emotional code. And what is the emotional code?
Well, first of all, thank you for that amazingly perfect introduction. You spared me having to go through my whole story for everybody. So, yeah, so you did that great. The emotion code is basically it's something that we have in our DNA. It's literally the accumulation of all the events that have ever happened to us from conception all the way up to where we are right now. And what happens as a result of those different experiences is literally our brain, every time there's an experience that startles us, that traumatizes us, that we don't even necessarily recognize as trauma, our brain drips down some chemicals that literally change the chemistry of the tissue in our body. And as that chemistry changes, it becomes a kind of a set patterning. So it becomes our way of choosing our way through the world and the choices are automatic instead of being conscious choices. So what I do is help people start to recognize that they have those codes that they didn't put in there consciously, become aware of those codes, and then start to shift those codes so that they can actually get what they really want in life instead of being the victim of circumstance or sort of being at the whim of other people's lives.
Okay. Because, I mean, especially when it's unconscious, it's like, how can you attack them? Because what are, like, it can also, I assume, really sabotage your life purpose if you're hindered by these old codes that you're not aware of and that keep interrupting, yeah, playing havoc on your mindset. So, what are the three ways that women actually sabotage their living their purpose?
Well, so one of the things that, I'll just give an example from my life, for example. So when
Mm-hmm.
I was a young girl, I used to sing. And I actually there was a period in my life when I was younger, I won a scholarship, and I lived in Peru for a while. And when I was there, I sang. I played guitar and I sang for some of the other students. And I got offered a contract by an agent to, launch a singing career. But I never pursued it because my mother was so against me being in entertainment. She had been in entertainment when she was a young lady. She was actually a very gifted Hawaiian dancer. She used to dance the hula, and she was the first that I know of, the first person in the United States that was adopted by a Hawaiian troupe and taught their ways. So she was taught the hula dancing from a very young, I think she started at 13 years old or maybe younger. But she had some bad experiences not with the hula group, but in the entertainment, people around the group that would book them and whatever. And so she thought that being in the entertainment was the worst possible choice I could ever make, right? So everything that I ever did around performing arts or whatever was completely discouraged. So I grew up believing that I didn't just think that I shouldn't do it. I believed that I couldn't do it because I was discouraged so much about it. So that became a belief. And so as a result of that, I suppressed my desire to sing and perform and all of that throughout my entire life. And then because I believed it so strongly, it was just to show you how the mind works, we attract what we believe, right? So I married, my husband's father was the assistant musical director of the show called The Tonight Show. I don't know if you saw that in your country, but it was Johnny Carson.
I lived in the US for 7 years, so I've seen Carson too, yeah.
Okay, all right. So he grew up in the performing world, right? So his dad, he rehearsed the musicians and all that. So he was the musical authority. And so at one time I sang for him, and he said, "Oh, you're just not good enough to pursue, a musical career." And again, it was like, oh, right? Like when you're young and impressionable, instead of somebody saying, "Okay, well, here's some constructive things you can do to whatever," But it was funny because every time I did auditions in high school and everything else, I always got the parts. So, but there was this other part going on, this other mental thing. Yeah. So that's one example. It can be things like choosing a traditional job that really doesn't express who you are. Like most of us grow up thinking, okay, I just have to earn a living. And that's kind of what happened to me. I didn't consciously choose the entertainment industry. I graduated university and then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't even want to go to university, but my family expected that of me, right? So that was another oh yeah, this is what you do. It never occurred to me that I could choose something else, right? Yeah. So then I fell into a career in Hollywood, and my thought process was I have to earn a living. I have to work to earn a living. It didn't matter whether it answered my soul purpose. It didn't matter whether it was in alignment with me. It was about just earning the income. So exactly. We all adapt things like that. People who grow up thinking their father was a doctor, so they grow up thinking they have to be a doctor, or their parents told them they need to be a lawyer, or you know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. And also that work is called work because nobody likes it.
Well, yeah. So when you follow your passion, it's not work anymore, right? Which is what I've discovered over, all these years of doing healing work is like the more I do, the more I heal, help other women heal. And it's not just, I've helped men too, but I prefer to focus on women. The more satisfied I feel and the more on purpose I feel. It's very enlivening to me. And I actually get energized, especially when I've had so many thousands of women that I've worked with who went from, like severe back pain, for example, for 10 years, they didn't, and couldn't heal it, to, hey, I feel great. Or one woman I worked with, which she kept having balance issues, right? And so something with her inner ear. And so when I worked with her, it had stopped her from dancing, it had stopped her from driving, it had stopped her from all these other things. And here she was, thought that was kind of the end of her life. She wasn't, having any fun anymore. And I was able to help her heal that. But I also work with people who are stuck emotionally, So I have a woman I was working with who, she, because of her experiences around relationships, she could not attract a loving man in a relationship that was, sort of normal, right? We'll just use that terminology.
Yeah.
That was the right match for her. That would be a better way of saying it. She would attract these men that were really bad choices for her over and over again, and it was because of her emotional coding. So I helped with her on that. So there are 4 P's that women, not just women, but men experiences too, but mostly I see it amongst us because we're more honest. Women tend to be a little bit more transparent about what's going on. So the first P is personalization. So personalization is, it's my fault. Like, it's my fault, this is bad, it's my fault, there's something wrong with me, that kind of thinking. And I think that drove me in my Hollywood career for years, because I always had to work harder, better, whatever. I always thought that because I wasn't getting the raise I wanted, it was because I wasn't good enough. What I didn't realize, and I could see now, was at the time is there's such a sexist culture in the entertainment industry. It doesn't reward women. It didn't back then, and it doesn't now. I mean, it's very hard for women to rise up in the industry. Right?
True. Yeah.
So that's personalization. We have to get rid of that, working with that. And then, but first we have to come to the awareness of that. So, and that's one of the things I help people with. It's like, okay, here's a place where you're holding it in your tissue, you're holding it in your mind. So pervasiveness, whatever this belief is, this is the second P, pervasiveness, whatever it is, it's going to ruin your life. If this doesn't happen, everything's ruined, right? And it kind of feeds into all the other there's all these little tendrils that go into the rest of our life. The third P that women fall into is permanence. I believe that I'm going to have this forever. It's never going to change, right? So those are the 3 Ps. And where I like to move people is from the 3 Ps into the 4th and 5th P. So the 4th P is possibilities. Now that I know that I've had this pattern and you're helping me to switch it, what are my options, right? What would make the most sense with my gifts and what my heart is saying to me? And then the last thing is collecting. The 5th P is positive evidence. So we start to switch from possibilities to doing these other things that are maybe out of our comfort zone, but we start to collect positive evidence that we can do it, or that what we have to offer is worthwhile for people.
Yeah, it sounds also really familiar to me. Like I've done a lot of volunteer work because I figure that's what you ought to do, and not because it's good to do volunteer work, but it was kind of devaluing, like that's the only thing I can get. So it was like a mind trick that kind of plays in that. So it takes a while to get out of that mindset of like you're not supposed to get more than that, and you're not supposed to have an abundant life. So,
right, and you know what? And I can relate to that. Yeah, because I've done so much volunteer work. But I will say the one thing about volunteer work is that oftentimes it will give you a chance to try something that, without risk, right? That you would have never done before, like develop another skill set that you didn't have, right? That's the good side. But like you said, the other side of that is I'm not valued. People love you and thank you for what you did, but it's like you're not getting the financial remuneration, and we need to earn a living in order to survive on this planet. That's just the reality, right? And it's our divine right. It's our divine right. I believe that we were created with the idea that we should have all this. We should have abundance. We should have, a thriving career. So, but when I work with my clients in terms of healing work, it goes into this. Now we're talking into the spiritual realm. It's not just emotional, right? We're talking about healing the spirit as well. So what you're talking about is having your spirit damaged, by staying in this plane where it's kind of never allowing you to shine and get remunerated for who you are and what you have to offer. So that's and I totally understand that. And that's one of the things I just love working with people on. I having, like I said, I volunteered for I do volunteer. I still do, actually. I'm on a little bit of a
Hmm.
break because of COVID, but I negotiate the contracts for a global spiritual organization for the hotels when they come to Los Angeles. And it's given me a chance to use my muscles in a different way. And I love that.
Hmm.
But,
Yeah.
you know, there's all these other pieces that go with it. And that's the other thing about volunteer work. You start with this little thing and you think it's going to be this little, and you say yes, and it's this little job, and then it grows, and
It grows and
right?
grows. Before you know it, it takes over your life.
There you go.
But it's
Yeah.
also nice to like use your purpose. I mean, not everything has to be a paid thing. So, I mean, it is good to express yourself through volunteer work and other things. I mean, it doesn't always have to equal money, but there's got to be a balance.
Right, exactly. And you know, another way to exercise that is just, I know this sounds so trite, but it's not. Random acts of kindness, you know, for other people.
Yeah.
It's like I would love to see more people doing that for other people. Simple little things that would, you know, it wouldn't cost much at all. For example, I had this woman, she's not going to hear this interview, so I can say this. So, you know, there's a, she lives in a place that I don't often go to. We were there about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it's all the way out in the desert. And out there happened to be a very good vegan bakery. Now, I'm not a vegan, but I love gluten-free muffins, whatever. So she was going to come to LA, and I said, well, are you coming through my area? Because I would just love to have one of those muffins. And she said, oh, well, I can't make the stop. And I was like, you see, that would have been a simple thing, right? And if it was me,
Yeah,
if somebody had asked, I would have been like, sure, no problem, right? But
exactly.
you know, it's a different mindset, right? So one
Hmm.
of being of service to everybody in whatever way. And sometimes there's money
Yeah.
involved, and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah. But it is that kind of abundance mindset that you don't
Mhm.
feel like it's scarcity and you have to fight for everything. And if somebody else gets something you don't, and that kind of thing, if you have an abundance mindset, there's enough for everybody to go around, and you're not protecting as much.
Right, exactly. And there is more than enough for everybody to go around. It's like I know that sometimes I will see myself slip into a competitive mode sometimes with other entrepreneurs out there that are doing work that is, there's maybe pieces where we overlap, right? They'll do something that's similar.
Mhm.
And then I go, well, wait a minute now. The same people that there's so many other people out there. I don't have to have the same group of clients that that person does, right? There's other people who are going
Mhm.
to resonate more with me, my heart, my honesty, my integrity. You know what I mean? And so really focusing on, and this is also part of collecting positive evidence. You know, when we fall
Yeah,
that P is so important. You know, the fifth
exactly.
P. You know, it's because
Yeah.
it's so easy because we'll do the one negative thing. A lot of us will focus on that, and that's really when I get into my courses, I talk about that more because that's actually a natural inclination of the brain. Very interesting that it will focus on the negative as opposed to the positive.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
I think it's something like, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I believe it's something like 80% of the thoughts that we think are repetitive, and of those, or it's 90% are repetitive and 80% are negative. So
Wow.
that's really, yeah.
That's amazing. That's a lot of negative
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah, yeah,
Because
exactly.
because and how can you help people change their mindset so they do get aligned more with their purpose? Like,
Okay. So there's a couple of things, you know, I mean, again, and also that when doing this, by the way, will also help with healing pain. Those of people who are listening and saying, oh, I've got this long-term pain. Although I do recommend, you know, obviously having a session with me about that or more. But
mhm.
so we start with simple things. So the first thing is awareness, you know, like really, you know, there's actually, well, okay, let's, first thing is actually listening. So most people don't listen, right? They not only don't listen
Mhm.
to other people, but they don't listen to themselves. Again, how the brain works is it will listen enough to collect evidence that agrees with what we already believe. Okay,
Ah,
and so
yeah.
we're we're collecting evidence that we're already right, that everything that we do is right and the way that we're thinking is right. So the first thing is to go, okay, wait a minute. Am I collecting evidence? Is this real? Or is this really, is this, and these are questions you can ask yourself. Is this real? Is this belief real? And then ask yourself again, is this really real? And what would it be like if this belief weren't real? What would happen? Okay, so that's a very simple, and actually that's probably the most profound thing to do. So simple but profound, you know, because doing that, being aware, you start to look at what's going on in your mind, and then start literally questioning whether those beliefs are real. When you can start to actually question your beliefs, then you can start to go, okay, wait a minute, that wasn't true. Or I learned that from my mom or my dad, not to blame anybody, but, you know, or I learned it from a teacher, or I learned it from somebody who was mean to me in high school, and I don't need to have that thought anymore, right? So what would happen if I didn't hold myself prisoner with that belief anymore? How would I act differently in the room or with other people? Like, how would that change me? So that's the first thing, the listening, the awareness. And then as you do those, what happens is the neuroplasticity of the brain changes. So this is where, because the chemical, this is all chemistry based. We have 62 chemicals in our body, and our body's constantly making different mixes up, you know. So we can feel sad, we can feel happy based on our chemical mixture. So once we start collecting positive evidence, we start to change the chemistry. So we're no longer depressed, sad, whatever. Now, sadness, depression, even if you're not conscious of it, starts to create inflammation in the body, which causes pain. Right? So these are things we have to start from the thinking and moving it down into the body awareness. So then the next thing is body awareness, which is, I call it BQ, or body intelligence. So listening to your body, you know, what is my body saying? You know, you don't just randomly get a pain in your neck. You don't just randomly have a problem with your back. That's based on some kind of emotional response to a situation, based on a belief that you're holding on to in the tissue. Yeah. So I know that's very heavy stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
But don't ignore the signs from your own body and mind. It's like, pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah. So what most people don't realize is the body is not just for carrying our brain around. It is literally, and it doesn't carry the mind, and it doesn't carry the spirit. Okay, the body, but what the body does do is it's a giver and a receiver of communication. So when we learn to listen to the body on an incremental level, we start to understand what's going on over in this, literally in this nerve over here, or this pain up in here. We start to say, well, what is that communicating to me? You know, and then what do I need to do to shift my mindset around that particular thought? Because a lot of times it's a perceptual issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then, and also trust what information you are getting. Don't, if you do kind of feel that you kind of figure out where it's coming from, like, don't press it away right away, but try to work on it and heal that part.
Right. Now, and yes, ideally, yes. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people don't recognize, they're pretty shut off to their body. They really don't know. They feel the big things, you know, like I call it the macro, right? The macro is the larger picture. They'll feel a pain. They'll feel, usually it's pain, right? They won't feel the subtle things like, oh, that was joy just now in my shoulder or in my solar plexus or whatever. So it's so part of the work that I do with people is teaching them how to start to have a more awareness of the communication that the body is sending to them, so they can start to shift. Yeah. So and then the besides the neuroplasticity, is the last thing is the intelligence. Like so as we shift our awareness of our body and its communication, our emotional intelligence and our body intelligence increases. As that increases, our vibration also goes up. So we, you know, there's a, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. David Hawkins' work and the scale of consciousness, but he talks a lot about different vibratory rates. And so the average person is vibrating at 200, which is or below, which is very low. That's like at the level of shame, okay, and fear, and where we want to be is up into the 4s and the 500s, where we start to get into acceptance and love, right? And but we raise that vibratory rate by shifting our way of thinking and our way of being conscious of our body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing stuff that you're sharing with us. So I think that will really, I think it's food for thought for everybody listening right now. So.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm very, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. And I do think if we knew, if we knew this, we would start to shift how we taught people, like as they from the time that they're an infant, all the way up. Even conception, could be more conscious, because birth and conception actually affect us so much, and people don't realize that. So, but that's for another episode. We don't have time for that today.
Exactly. I'll be doing more of these events, so it's in the planning. And I understand that you have a free gift for the audience. Could you tell us something about it?
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm offering is I'm offering basically what's called a free emotional intelligence test, where I would actually sit with live on Zoom with somebody like you and I are doing right now, and I give them a test, and then I give them an evaluation of what that means. So it helps them become aware of where their level of emotional intelligence is. And the idea is not to make you feel bad. It's to help you understand where you want to improve, because sometimes, it's funny, like most people, I think some people find this very surprising, but most people will rate themselves as a better listener than what they actually are. And it's the same thing with emotional intelligence. People will say, oh, well, I'm emotionally intelligent. But then when I start to drill down and I ask them, pointed questions, then we start to see where the gaps are, because there's a lot of, it's not intentional, but we have blind spots, right? And so if you know where your blind spots are, if somebody can, like I take my time to help you see where some of your blind spots are, that's very valuable. So I normally charge $400 for these evaluations, and I'm giving it to your listeners for free. So and so in order to take advantage of that, you would go to eqmindshift.com. And I guess I don't know if you're going to have this somewhere printed out.
And there's going to be a really big button underneath the video that you can click to get that free gift. So I definitely would recommend people to do that. I mean, it will really help your path to start up your path really quickly.
Yeah, and just, if you're interested in raising your vibration and you're interested in shifting yourself, you want to shift from, a career that you've had, or maybe you don't even know what you're doing right now. This can support you in terms of getting conscious of that. And if you're interested in knowing more, I do offer sessions, to people over Zoom. I don't have to physically put my hands on you. So they can also go to my website as well, which you have my website, right?
And that's also going to be with all the speaker information. They can all find all the information about you and how to get in touch with you, and Facebook links and all that kind of stuff. So they definitely know how to find you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I would really would like to thank you so much for the wonderful tips you shared, and also thank the audience for listening to us. And you're listening to Petra Carroll and Carla Sridevi Cohen for the first Healing Ways event Micro Summit. Take a leap, manifest your destiny and soul path. So I think we got some really good stuff here. So take advantage of it. And I'd like to remind everybody that all the interviews are all made available right from the start of the event. And so you can watch them whenever you want, at the time that you want. So you don't have to wait for a perfect time before that there's a live show or something. So everything is available right from the start. And please take advantage of it when you can. It's only going to be for 1 week. I really hope that everybody loved that episode as much as I did. And I'd say go grab your inner power and go dazzle them out there and use all these tips and tricks that you've heard during the event to really make that leap in a career possible. So thank you, Carla, and thank you, audience.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was lovely to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.